talking about it because I saw a lot of people advocating for defunding the police, and then funnily enough, today I was at work and somebody called. I don't know. I said, "Oh, they're trying to defund the police. We're looking for donations so we can support our main group of the police." Like you said, they're taking 400 million. And stuff.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to finish the part about the policing why it's so bad, as far as how we're getting stuff back.
Yeah.
Or do you want me to do that?
No, finish what you started.
Okay.
Then you can come to this.
So just to touch on the history of policing, after it became a public situation, what ended up happening is, like, around Prohibition, 1920s, right, when alcohol was illegal, President Hoover, they were, like, investigating why, like, what's going on with cops and corruption? And this is 1929.
Right.
And so they made the Wickersham Commission, which is a law and justice commission, to, like, do an assessment of policing in this country. And they found it was corrupt, there's issues with it, there needs to be a bunch of changes, and there should be community-oriented reforms, right? Because it's like, who's going to be able, like, police checking police isn't going to work, right? It's an internal thing. But this is 1929 when it started, in 1931 when the report came out. Mind you, we're still talking about defunding the police in 2020 when they already knew that policing was corrupt back in and they just gave them way more money and more power. They've been doing that. Militarizing, yeah. And actually militarization came up under Obama. A lot of the military equipment came up under Obama.
Obama.
But sorry, that went to the defunding comment. That's why I wanted to get that out first.
Okay, that's good.
It's insane. As a military person, sometimes when I see all the tactical ideas they have,
it's like they're
this is a civilian
war zone.
You know, when the squad, whatever, when they're called to go and attack something, it's like, I'm like, are you kidding me?
Well,
it's just like a war zone. It's kind of embarrassing.
The deadly exchange. So you guys know about the conflict in Palestine, or the apartheid and genocide that's going on in Palestine? Yeah. U.S. cops train in Palestine, like in Israel.
For real?
Yeah, they're trained by the Israeli Defense Force, and then they come back suited and booted. You know what I mean? Stomping on people's necks, and then it's the same tactic. So when I say, like, I'm like, we don't get out of this unless we recognize our struggles around the world, and it's a global movement to oppress people of color. That includes Palestine, that included anything that was going on in South Africa with apartheid. These are the same regimes, and they're the same, we know, because they go and hang out with each other and they share things. Like the U.S. is literally funding the Israeli military, you know what I mean? And it's like they do a lot of that stuff, and it's like, okay, they get the same gear and they're using the same things. Like the U.S. also, shares arms with a lot of places, like funds, and makes it so places are destabilized. So it's important to know, like, as far as why policing is the way it is in this country, it's because of the U.S.'s international relations and how the U.S. has been treating people internationally, funding conflicts and harm to people internationally, and then it's coming home to roost. But all that military gear had to go somewhere. So, and they don't want us to talk.
Yeah, and you say that is very important. One thing you say is how we are affected globally.
Yes.
As people of color, and that is very important because as a community, African community, a lot of Africans, especially through we don't participate in this protest and civil rights movement stuff, civil rights movement, and it's very important. We are all part of this. People don't understand. We are all part of this because for me, I know a lot of people, young people in here in America. It doesn't matter, from Africa or something. You've been through some sort of, policing. In the system, because I remember one time I was coming from work, I passed through the gas station. Not the gas station, ATM machine. So I tried to get some gas, and then after there, I went to the gas station, and I didn't see any cop behind me or something, And then after when I went to the gas station, I was parking in the gas station, trying to get some stuff ready, and then go inside the gas station. And I saw police behind me, two police cars. I'm like, okay, what's going on? So I kind of, because I was getting out, so I got out. Then I told the car, he was walking towards me. I was like, are you coming for me? He was like, yes. So I stand there, wait. And then she told me, why I stopped you? Your license has expired. I'm like, my license? No, I don't think so. Yeah, my driver's license.
They can run your license plate.
So I gave it to her. She ran and she gave it to the others on the back up. They ran it.
That's all of that's illegal, by the way.
It was clear, yeah. It was illegal, right? Yeah, exactly.
It was clear.
Exactly. And then she was like, the reason why was your license plate, the light, is not working. I'm like, really? I looked at it and it's working.
So what?
There's nothing wrong with it.
That's the gaslighting. You're like, nothing's wrong here.
Nothing's
They
wrong.
just saw that you're black.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. You even have to call back up because I was putting a machine to the gas station. Wow, that's crazy. So it's very important as people of color, you know, whatever they call the black people, you know, for us to stand and then fight for each other, you know, and then and that has to, you know, go to our systems in Africa too, because a lot of African governments are not even standing for African Americans when these things are happening. Now we see it happening after George Floyd case, but previously you don't see any African leader, you know, talking about these things that are happening in America. You know, they are whatever happened, they are our brothers and sisters. You know what I mean? We're from the same bloodline. That's the fact. So if we stand for each other, I mean, if Africans or African governments, you know, have this in the system to stand, whatever happens, they feel, you know, talk to American government about it. Now people, they will know that these people, they have someone who is standing for them. And then they will, I mean, I'm not going to say it's going to stop, but you know,
Well, and I just want to point out, like,
yeah.
before we were Americans, we
Yeah.
were in Africa. We
Yeah.
were chill. You know what I mean? Like, we were cooling. So it's like, and like, it was the forced migration of millions and millions of people, 800,000 of which landed in the United States. Most of the people landed in the Caribbean went down to South America. And even like what I know about the diaspora generally, like I had to research about Haiti's history, right?
Yeah.
And that tells you that, like, even though Haiti's close, like relatively, like for us to have to do so much research to find out about something so big as far as the Haitian Revolution and how huge that was, and the like reparations that they ended up paying to France for their freedom. Just anyways, that's a whole other thing. But like, there is an intentionality behind not telling us each other's histories. For Black folks here, it's like I grew up literally thinking that we didn't come from anything but chains, and that we were the reason why we were still in this situation.
Yeah.
And it was like
that.
and it makes you think like you don't deserve anything, you didn't earn anything, your people didn't care enough, and it was like, you know, you're just lazy or whatever they want to tell you and sell you, and like you're only good for entertainment. They don't tell us about Black brilliance, right? Like we don't, like there's so many inventions in this country that were made by Black people, they just left out of the history books. Like, all I learned about was white dudes, and I'm like, and they're definitely no women either. So it's like, that's intentional. If we team up, if we see each other as
the same,
as family,
yeah,
they can't stop us. And like that's what they know. That's why there's so much misinformation. So it's like, it's been really interesting learning about African history. I mean, it's so huge, right? And history's so like, there's just so much to learn. But it's also been very validating and beautiful to like, I knew this deep down, but nobody told me, and I'm like, this shit's on purpose. So it's like,
So based on the African history, like you are born here, you did your schooling and everything. So at what stage in your schooling did they start teaching you African history? Because somebody is crazy. It's like they intentionally left it out.
Yeah.
Like, but there must be a place that they start. Like, what stage was that?
So I remember learning about slavery, and so just like Black history, I learned about it in fourth grade. I learned about some stuff in Egypt when I was in high school, but not about Nubia or any of that. Nothing. Definitely not about Timbuktu. Like just learned about that. So it's like, kind of a big deal, right? Like all of those things, especially like being of West African descent, like a really big deal. They just left that out. And you know, when I remember being in law school, and a guest lecturer came and was talking about Haiti and the Haitian Revolution.
Right.
And that's when I was like, because they tell us about emancipation, right? They're like, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves in 1865, and I was like, okay. Then I grow up and I'm like, wait a minute. I was like, Haitian Revolution was 1791 to 1804. That was the first wave of liberation across the globe for Black people. That's where Black people were free. Outside of Africa, like, you know, outside, like in the diaspora.
Right.
That's the first revolution, and it was successful. Kicked the French out. French rolled up later and took everything, you know, and said, like, if you don't pay us, you know, a ton of money and give us discounts on your exports, then we're going to take everything back, right? We're going to re-enslave you. So Haiti was perpetually in debt. Haiti was one of the richest countries in the world, but their wealth has been stolen over generations because of France. Yeah, and they're super poor now. But so emancipation starts there. Then 1830s is Britain. Then 1865 is the U.S.
Right.
So black folks freed themselves first, but they didn't tell us about that.
No.
So they make it always seem that white people saved us.
Yeah.
Even with Harriet Tubman, right? Like Harriet Tubman, she freed people. Harriet Tubman was so amazing. Like there's such a strong history behind her.
Yeah.
Like not only was she freed out like I think it was like 1,000 people, but she also gave information to the Union Army so that they could be successful in beating the South.
Oh wow.
Just kind of left that out, right? And like even we talk about Rosa Parks, it's like she's an old lady who sit in the back of the bus or like in the front of the bus and she didn't want to move because she was tired. No. This was a concerted effort and organization, and sis had a shotgun. You know what I mean? Like, and she was in her 40s.
She was in her 40s.
Yeah, and so it's like they make it so we're like placated in our history and we're never the advancers of liberation. But this country doesn't have a constitution like the rights. Like the Bill of Rights means nothing without Black lives. Like we did not make freedom freedom was not a thing in this country until we advocated for it. Every big civil rights movement, and I'm talking about the LGBTQ movement, all of that came from Black folks. And so it's like, it's just ironic that 400 years later we still have to say, Black Lives Matter. Like, what do you mean? Or like, teach our history in school. There is no United States without Black history. Black history is American history. Black history is world history. So they teach us like we're elective. You know what I mean? It's like we're foundational. Like that's just like why it was like the economy wouldn't have survived. Like nothing would have happened without us, and we just never get credit. But like there's so many stats about. For example, there's a $23 billion a year resource disparity between white schools and schools like BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color. From like housing discrimination between 1934 and 1962, federal government backed $120 billion in home loans, and 98% of them went to white people.
98%.
And so those home loans from from the New Deal literally built the wealth of the middle class. And so we were just kept out of it. Like military people, veterans bill stuff, none of it. We didn't have access to it. And so all of a sudden, they're like, Black people are broke. It's like, y'all stole everything. Not only did you steal our labor for hundreds of years. Then when we did everything right, mind you, all the the Great Migration, all the lynchings that happened were to steal Black property. Because we were building we were farming and everything. We had land right after, because Reconstruction happened. Did you guys know about Reconstruction? Yeah. Reconstruction happened right after slavery. And we were given seats, there was more just equity generally.
Crop sharing,
exactly. Well, outside of sharecropping, but actual we had seats in Congress. There's a lot more rights and everything. And then white rage happened. They got mad and then they started lynching us. That the lynching and everything that happened with the election of Andrew Johnson, he took the National Guard out of the South, which was supposed to be protecting us from Southern rage, retaliation against folks who were enslaved. And mind you, slave owners got reparations. They got paid for lost property, but we can't get a dime. So it's this is why this country's so ironic. So it's
that's right.
Yeah, all that happened. So with the lynchings, they stole all our property, and so then we flooded into the cities, right? And then all the trades and everything were done in the cities. People were doing, manufacturing stuff. Well, then they started shipping manufacturing out. So then we lost. Then you had urban decay. And it's we weren't safe in the South because they were murdering us. No jobs in the city, and then all of a sudden it's inner cities. And there was white flight. It used to be there was a Supreme Court case. What was it? Was it Rodriguez? Never mind. I'll look at my fact, but the Supreme Court case basically was saying that you could have the money for schools and property taxes didn't have to be equally distributed amongst schools. And so white people moved to the burbs, their money went with them. And so what white flight did was they moved out of our neighborhoods, right? Because when they couldn't keep us in chains in their houses, they moved out. And then they made their places wealthy, but then they made restrictive covenants so we couldn't move into those neighborhoods. So redlining is where they drew parts around neighborhoods where we could never live. And so even though we could afford it, we had good credit. In this, mind you, the discrimination that happened wasn't because we weren't qualified through all the paperwork. We were qualified for those loans and we were qualified for those homes. They just didn't give them to us. And they kept us out. And so all that wealth maintenance and all the accumulation over the golden age in the US or whatever, we were kept out of. So I want to make it very clear. And then on top of that, they started criminalizing everything. So, it would be if you had crack cocaine on you, which is associated with blackness because racism, if you had that, you would get a way higher sentence if you had cocaine than if you had cocaine on you. You'd be gone for decades for a little bit of crack. People are still doing prison sentence for marijuana.
Yeah.
And now marijuana is a multi-billion-dollar industry built off of our genius, mind you, the medicinal purposes and everything. But people are still in prison. And the people who have marijuana convictions, they can't get business licenses.
Wow.
And so 90-something% of them are owned by white people. And it's like a continual, perpetual screwing us over and then feeding it back like, you guys are in jail all the time. We didn't, like, that's not how it
It's
happened.
just a stigma, to keep you down.
Exactly.
It's
So,
like the crime bill.
yeah, exactly. When the idea was like, there's different labels in this country, right? It went from like, you're black, so you're a slave, to you're a criminal, so you're a slave. And so I just want people to know that how quickly they will label so they can dismiss. So there is no separation in black struggles globally. It's just, yeah, we were African before we were forced to be American, and like, you know, they do, this is what they did. They literally, I was just learning about the numbers. There's 12 million people stolen, and anyways.
Wow.
I can't
This topic is like you can
Sorry,
go
I'm
on.
traumatizing
We can talk about this like next 100 years.
You know.
So, but the movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, all of a sudden it just came up and it's now gaining grounds the whole over. You know, everywhere you go, Black Lives Matter. What do you think is the solution to things that are happening right now?
I think we need to leave.
That's what I'm saying. Let's go back home.
Honestly,
Like this.
Let's go place like it.
no, and honestly, like, it took me so. There are a lot of people that I love to read. Cedric Robinson and Audre Lorde and Angela Davis, and like even Malcolm X said, like, we're not going to have safety in the diaspora. Like, there's no black strength if we don't have a strong black continent. You know, like Africa.
That's
And
my
what
thing. That's my thing.
And like what happened was they like all the people who were stolen. We were going to be building Africa, but instead we ended up building the diaspora. It's like, what would Africa be now? You know what I mean? Like, what would we be if we were able to stay together?
Stay there together.
And that's how
I
we're
don't mean
going
to cut you, but you know, I always say this: they took our strongest people, our smartest people.
And that's what history taught us.
That's
When
what
they
it
came
is.
over,
Yeah,
they were looking for the stronger ones, the ones who can walk.
They have to
everywhere.
check you up, even if you have a little scratch. You're not going to be on the boat or something like that. Even if you're going to be on the, your value is not going to be that much. So, like you say, what you said there is what it is. Instead of, those people, if they are on the continent, what they're going to do to achieve, it's going to be, man.
Yeah, we got to crack.
I have a question. As an immigrant and been in America for like 5 years, I always feel like there is a gap between African Americans who were born here and then immigrants from Africa like me and my fellow brothers and sisters. I feel like there's always a huge gap.
It's yeah.
Okay,
It's true.
before you answer that, because I had a conversation with somebody, like an African American, and she was like, I don't know where she get that from. She was like, you guys were so wicked, and then you sold us, like you.
That's what they told
They
me.
say you are wicked people.
Yeah.
And you sold us to this white people.
Yeah.
That's why we are here.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. That's why I want to know. So, are those some of the reasons why we have some of these issues, these misconceptions, and these issues between us?
I think that it's a quote unquote lack of familiarity, right? Like, there's all these like myths or whatever that go. I mean, I've had arguments with white folks like, well, Africans sold you guys too, and I was like,
Right. I think that's what they taught.
I was like, first of all, do you want to fight? But second of all, like, there's a lot of history in between that, and nobody knew what white folks were doing with the transatlantic. That wasn't like the transatlantic slave trade was a new type of evil. Columbus touched down, and this is again why we have collective liberation when I talk about like we will not be free unless Black, Indigenous, and all people of color are free. And this is why, because whiteness has done this amazing thing. It is very adoptive. It's so slick. Like before, it was like Catholics, Protestants. It was like Protestants, white, Anglo-Saxon. Protestants were white people. Catholics, Jewish people, Italians, Irish were not considered white.
Yeah.
But then they were like, wait, we need to get more white people.
I know.
So like, you got to get like Irish people were pretty persecuted, but it was like, you're still closer to us than Black folks are. So join the team, and that's what they're doing with Asian folks too, with the model minority kind of dynamic. We're like trying to like again make it so they're always the power majority, and so we need to see ourselves as ubiquitous, as like what whiteness does is adapt. We need to adapt to like obviously we have our differences, right? Our cultural differences. But at the end of the day, like the KKK is not going to differentiate between you and I. You know what I mean? Like we're all getting. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, like we need to understand we have a
common goal.
a common goal of being alive and free. But
Yeah.
with Christopher Columbus, like 1492 touched down in the Americas or whatnot. Obviously didn't discover anything; it was already discovered. But when they did that, like 90% of the indigenous population died. like murder, smallpox, plagues, all this stuff. They wiped them out, and that's when they started stealing Africans. So I'm like, well, people are like, oh, you know, Native Americans are fighting for, you know, water at Standing Rock. I'm like, we should be fighting for water rights too. We all need water. You know, like, these are not different fights. This is the same thing, and it's all about fighting for liberation and escaping from one global capitalism that is just exploiting and destroying the world because like it's killing the planet. That's just the reality of it. But also white supremacy.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and say Africans being involved in slavery because in every society you have bad and good people.
yeah,
And even in America here, most of the slave cultures are black people.
yeah,
Even blacks own slaves. So every society that happened, but just to say to generalize, to say, you know, African people, because that's what a lot of African Americans do. So this is an education, and we have to do because it's obvious that one of my cousins, my family cried for the longest because of one kid was taken out of the family for slavery. It does happen.
yeah,
You know, in America here, like one of my big brothers used to say, you know, every day I walk in the streets, you know, I see my cousin, we don't know each other.
yeah,
That's right there. My blood, they have my blood.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And it's very important for us to be receptive about this matter. You know, we need to have an open mind, have a discussion. You know, it's very important for us to have this conversation and then to bridge these gaps that are happening between us because we're one people. You know, especially to say, you know, West African people, because the majority of the slaves came from enslaved. I'm not going to say they're not slaves, they are enslaved, came from the West Africa. So those are our brothers and sisters, you know. And I say Africa, you know, Africa, the whole Africa, you know, the whole continent, you know, we need to come together as one people. You know,
it's very important.
Yeah.
But I think it has started, you know,
Yeah.
because when you look at last year, 2019, places like Ghana, they label it as the year of return. A lot of people are going back. When you look at Gambia right now, we have a lot of African Americans who are going there, not just for vacation, but they are living there, doing businesses and then owning properties and staying there. So I think it has started, but we need more people, more African Americans.
You know, especially the younger Africans.
And us too, we the Africans, the immigrants, when we come, we always have to turn our heads back and say, okay, let's go back and do something about our country. Because most of us, it's so unfortunate, when we come, we don't have to go back.
yeah,
No, we don't go. We want to make this place home, stay here until you're in 60s or 70s, and then you go back and die there and then place a graveyard. So, I think there is hope.
yeah.
Black Lives Matter too is big, it's getting bigger every day, so
There's hope.
Yeah.
Guys, I want to turn the conversation back a little bit where we start. You know, because if you look at especially Gambian diaspora, because a lot of people who are going to be watching this video, mostly Gambians, we're not involved in the legal system. In the sense that, for example, if somebody has a case or is in trouble, chances are they will not talk to an attorney. So can you tell, like, here in America, the legal system is it's not black and white. This is black, but somebody can tell that this is right, and they would win.
Yeah.
So can you tell us like how important it is for people to start to talk to an attorney? I know like when you say, hey, you know, we need to go see a lawyer, people say, hey, that's expensive.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that comes to their mind. But can you explain that attorney client relationship and then why is it so important that you need to talk to an attorney in America, especially when felony and other things are at stake?
Yeah. So what the U.S. system is really good at is if you don't have documentation or paperwork or a paper trail, they'll be like, you don't get a claim, right? So if you haven't been trying to speak to a lawyer about the issue, if you haven't making those efforts, they'll definitely use that against you. So it's important, I say, like, a lawyer is going to be in a better position to advise you. But the thing is not all lawyers are created equal, right? So it's going to be about developing community around folks who can represent, who can be trustworthy and aren't going to take advantage of people's money. And I think there's just so much that's, even if I'm like, okay, how much should I pay for this type of lawyer or something like that? Like it's like a totally different, like, I don't know, you know what I mean? It's like, I literally do this, and it's like, there's just so many different caveats, and you don't know the quality that you're getting. So I think the best thing is to really tap into people's networks and see if they know somebody, because a lot of legal work is word of mouth. when I was a public defender, when I went into private practice, most people got a hold of me. It's like, oh, you represented somebody that I knew, blah blah blah. They said blah, and I was like, oh, I don't even advertise. You know what I mean? It's like, and also because there's not very many Black attorneys, but it's like I don't need to advertise because it's like the work that I did spoke for itself. So when you're looking for an attorney, don't go for big billboards, right? Like see who people are talking about, who people trust. But yeah, definitely talk to a lawyer because I mean the system is so slick. They'll steal everything. Yeah, I mean there's more statistics, there's more stuff, you know what I mean? But like they will, yeah, it's really slick, especially with the landlord situation. It's really bad. Like there's an eviction moratorium until October right now, but people are getting, you know, and they can't even kick people out of hotels, but they're still trying to do it, throw people out, and that's like a criminal offense. You can get your landlord in trouble for stuff like that. But there's just a lot of stuff that would. There are a lot of different laws that can work in people's favor if they knew how to access the people who know how to use it. But in this country, access is never something that we've really been given.
They make it so difficult.
Yeah, it's really hard. But with criminal cases, it's really important. We're trying to develop a network for folks to talk to. Like right now, my firm, we're doing a protest campaign. We're offering free representation to protesters who are arrested. And we did a GoFundMe or whatnot. But a lot of the time, it's like when I walk into jail to go visit people, especially Black people, they start crying. It's like because they're just so happy to see another Black person. It's like, oh, you know what I'm going through. You know what I mean? You see me. Like I don't have to. Because every time we have to validate, well, we know the cop was racist. Like obviously the cop was racist, but like you know you have to like prove it somehow. And it's like, come on, you know, it's like where are we going to be at this point? But it's really meaningful to talk to an attorney, and again, it's network building. But yeah, be careful with where you're spending your money. And if you need to take a step back and like compare different attorneys and see what they can do for you, you can do that.
That is important, man. Sure, we have to do this again, man. But the challenge is that we have to come back again. This part 2 has to happen. Thank you so much, man. On the closing note, man, I would tell everybody out there to grab this book. This book is written by a Gambian brother, Sekou Kamara, and it's an amazing book about Africa. And Africa to a million. Go and grab your copy. African Americans, Africans, everybody need to read this.
Hold on.
My opinion. Yeah, you didn't. Yeah, I was gonna show you later. You go on Amazon and then grab your copy there. Read this book. If you want to know about Africa,
that's awesome.
He's an African, and this is a true story about Africa. Read the book. So like I was saying, African Americans and Africans on the continent, we are one people.
We are one the same.
We are one people. It doesn't even come to my mind to say we are different. You know what I mean? Since I came to this country, you know what I mean? I live in the African American community. I see we interact. I see how they interact with each other, just like Africa.
Yeah.
It's just like Africa.
Yeah.
You see how all the other people, especially the Ghanaians, how they, hang out on their porch and everything. Same thing with Africa. I mean, so I'm like, wow. So when I was there, I feel home. Trust me, man. When I came down here, it took me for a while for me to integrate in the society because, when I came, I don't see a lot of Black people over here. I'll be like, where are the people at?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And for us Africans, it's the fact. We have to say it. Africans, sometimes the perception that we have when it comes to African Americans is very wrong sometimes. For people, like I say, you cannot just judge people. Don't judge people. Have a conversation with them first. We are the same in so many ways.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Don't just. That's the fact. African community, the way we see, like I said, the way we see people is sometimes very wrong. We need to have a conversation. And African Americans don't just listen to whatever you see on news or whatever. Take a trip to Africa, any African country for that matter. Take a trip there and then go see for yourself.
Yeah.
Go see it for yourself, man. Africa is the next big thing. And I'm encouraging every African American to take your craft in Africa. Invest in Africa.
I mean, Europe has been doing that.
Yeah.
Europe literally started by pilfering Africa. Africa's always been a big deal. Everybody steals things. Everybody steals things.
But now is there's no better. Now is the best time to go to Africa.
Yeah, now is the best time.
Let's take a trip. Like
I always say, if you want to go to Africa, now is the right time to go grab your
That's what I'm
passport
saying.
anywhere.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be a time that's going to be helping you to have a passport, man.
Yeah.
Go get your passport, man. And for
then-
me, I believe in this. I think any African country should give African Americans, automatic citizenship. Because, number one, they were from there, like you said.
Yeah.
You guys were
Yeah.
Africans before than Americans. So you should be able to have that place that you call home. That
We
is
need
gonna
that.
be, yeah.
Whew, we need that.
Most definitely. I mean, I always say that. I don't care who say whatever, but that's what I believe, and I still stand on that. Because they were taking from us, illegally.
By
Yeah,
force.
every right. Their ancestors have blacks over there, and they were citizens. They have everything there. They have rights to everything that we actually are having out there. So it's very important. If any African American, I'm not going to say there's going to be laws. Of course, every country has laws.
Yeah.
They should, but they should consider giving anybody who want to go to Africa, especially who want to take their craft or their business or whatever in Africa, they should be able to, consider it.
And I want to say this to Black folks here: like when we go, we cannot perpetuate the oppressive systems that were done to us in colonization. So when we go back to a place where we've never actually touched down, we have to be respectful. We have to integrate with the community. We have to invest in the community. We don't take. We build. And so it's like we can't. We got to be good, to do it right. And I think communally, that's what we would naturally do, is to say that and name that, because when you're harmed for so long, that's what you perpetuate. And so it's like if we go there and we're living separately and we're not investing in the community,
Very important.
integrating. It's like we're doing all the wrong.
Yeah, we're doing
it the wrong way.
That area too. What Ghana is doing, I like that because it's structured. The government is actually involved. But what Gambia is doing right now, people are just saying, you know what, I'm tired of here. Pack their things and then go to Gambia.
Yeah.
They deal with it all, which is okay. But you don't want people to start, you want people to start integrating the right way. I feel like the government need to put some kind of structure. When people come, give them education and then try to integrate them in the system. But right now we have a lot of African folks going back. And my only scary thing is the local folks and the people that are coming in. If there's no structure in place and there's no system that is going to actually protect both sides, that could be.
And that's very important because the mindset too. I know a lot of people don't put this into consideration. The African mindset is very different from here, and I'm not going to apologize for that. That's just the fact. So if you go there, try to educate yourself. Try to integrate try to integrate with the society and read the society. And if you see something that you think is not right, educate before you talk about it.
Yeah.
Educate people. Because the mindsets are not totally different.
Yeah, I need to read a lot of books.
Yeah.
I've been trying to watch videos and learn some stuff. Yeah, start there.
Start from here. So thank you so much, man. We appreciate you, Sade. And man, this is a long conversation.
Yeah,
you gotta do it.
It's very interesting.
Maybe 4 more episodes.
This one need 2 episodes, right?
Yeah, I don't know where. We'll see what we're gonna do. But
It's long, so you cut it to 2.
Yeah,
Just one.
Yeah, let's see what we're gonna
Let's
do.
see, yeah.
But then, thank you so much today
No problem.
for coming
Thanks
through.
for having me.
Now we appreciate it.
Thank you, Sade.
All right. Thanks for watching.
We'll
Share this video and
We'll
then
see you in Gambia soon.
let's have this conversation,
Yes.
man.
Go on a property in
Yeah.
Gambia.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Sade. All right.